Hello, people. How are we? Welcome to this weekend of Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. Actually, really looking forward to this fight. Obviously, I'm biased, but I will give this disclaimer. I am biased. I do want Volkanovski to win. I'm a huge fan of Islam Makhachev, but I know Alex, so it's very hard to you know be objective, really. When I'm going to try and be as objective as possible now when I do the breakdown, but I'm definitely going for Alex. Nathan Gorman says, how will or should Volkanovski close the distance, blitzing or pressure via stalking? Look, man, it's hard to answer that. I'm just going to give, this is going to probably answer a few of the questions that are already up there. This is what I think on this. There's a lot of X factors to this fight that I don't know how they're going to play out, and I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know how Volkanovski is feeling with his elbow. I don't know how big Volkanovski will be in comparison to how big Islam will be in this fight. Because in the other fight, Volkanovski had more time. He was the alternate, if you remember correctly, when Charles and Islam fought, and then he had more time to build himself up into an actual true 155er. This time he was already thinking about Ilia Topuria for this fight, and he was thinking of 145. His body wasn't necessarily ready for that to be the size that he's going to need to be at 155. Alex, a big guy, is a professional, all of that. I'm just giving these points. I don't know how they're going to end up looking. I don't know what that part. I know that Islam wasn't able to rehydrate the way that he would have liked to due to the laws here in Australia. They're different. The rehydration window is different. So this will definitely affect, plus the travel, plus the jet lag that Islam went through the first time. This affects. I don't know how the fact that Alex has had 10 days instead of a whole camp, I don't know how that's going to affect Alex, and I don't know how much it's going to be like you give, how much you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because there isn't going to be the pressure on Alex. There isn't going to be all of that, but he is going to be getting there on short notice. He doesn't have a full camp. He just got through surgery. So I don't know about that either. It's going to be interesting to see how much the rehydration and the being closer to home, etc., is going to make a difference for Islam. So these are things that I don't know in these fights. These are the real intangibles of this fight. So it's very hard for me to answer that first question. If Islam doesn't finish Volk, let me see. Would it be bad for Islam considering Volk took it on 10 days' notice, a bit like Khabib versus Ala Quinta? Khabib's legacy took a slight hit because of it. Will Islam? I don't think so. And I don't think Khabib's did. I think that it's hard to fight people when they come in like that on 10 days' notice too. It's hard. You were preparing for a completely different fighter. And in fairness to Khabib and in fairness to Islam, anyone that's thinking of going to 155 is always preparing for Islam, is always preparing for Khabib. So that's a little bit of a different thing. Whereas they're not, you know what I mean? They're preparing for Charles. So I think that, or for whoever, you know what I mean? This is a different thing, So not necessarily. Volkanovski's no fucking clown, you know what I mean? Volkanovski's probably one of the, not pound for pound, probably one of the best to ever do it. Not pound for pound at the moment, not just in featherweight, but one of the best to ever do it, So this is something that if you don't finish this guy, it's not a fucking, you can't say it. This is a fucking one of the best guys to ever do it. Madura says, if Volk does move forward aggressively to KO Islam, how will Islam react? He has a tendency to move backwards and counter with the straight left. Is this Islam's best weapon to counter Volk's pressure? Again, he traditionally doesn't do the best moving backwards, Islam. But I do think we're going to see more front kicks from him and more kicks in general to the body, to the open side body, to the head. I do think we're going to probably see that, and that will probably mitigate Volk's pressure to some degree. Pep Guard said, Volk said on Hawani show today, he can't afford to show Islam respect like he did in the first fight. What do you think he means by this? Is he referring to Islam's grappling or something else? I think it just means that he has to just pop from the start. He's going to really come out and put it on him. Whereas I think he was a little bit hesitant with Islam's grappling in that first fight. And I don't think he's going to worry too much about what Islam can do as opposed to what he can do. I think that's what he means by that. Khabib and Islam watched the Volk fight back on UFC Countdown and were very confident they won the majority of the fight, which leads me to believe they'll implement the same game plan. Thoughts? Yes, but the game plan is different considering there's strategy, tactic, and technique. But if you don't have the technique, or you can't put the technique in place to get your tactics and your strategy going, then it doesn't matter. And if the weight cut, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, I'm going for Alex. I was going for Alex in that fight. But if the weight cut affected Islam to that extent, it could have. These rehydration windows, like 12 hours, stuff like that, matters massively. If you're a big guy cutting weight, if that affected him, then he can do the same game plan. It'll just look different, so who knows? Who do you think has a punching power advantage, Islam or Volk? Also, who has a physical power advantage, considering Volk was physically able to turn Islam around on the fence, which was impressive? I think they both crack. They can both crack. That's one thing that now everyone knows about Islam, which probably people didn't know. I think that the stature of Volkanovski makes it very, very hard for you to move him and maneuver him. This is very, very difficult. I think this will also allow Islam to make adjustments according to that. And I think Volkanovski, if he hits you flush, you're going to stay hit. And if he can implement his own physicality on Islam, moving back onto the cage, it's going to create a lot of problems for Islam, a lot. Where did Volk learn his wrestling and grappling, considering it did so well against a high-level grappler? Donnie Brown from Lake Illawarra, PCYC. Shout out to Don Brown, the man, the legend. As far as I know, I remember Volkanovski being a little kid at the wrestling comps, being 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, something like this. And I'd see him at the wrestling comps all the time. And Don Brown was the head coach at Lake Illawarra PCYC. And he's always trained with Joe Lopez, as far as I know. And then obviously he's been grappling, all over the world with all different people as well. But he's been grappling a long, long time. And then he's got the physicality and the striking to be able to mitigate Islam's grappling. Somebody says, apparently Volkanovski got surgery on his elbow 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I don't know how the fuck that worked, to be honest with you. Yes, she says, might be an obvious question, but is Volk making the right decision taking this fight on 10 days' notice? I think, I can't say yes or no, but I think that the big thing is if he loses the fight, he then still can fight Topuria or whoever for the featherweight belt. He's not really putting the belt up, and he's going to get paid a lot of money towards the tail end of his career. And if you think about it, he could lose the next featherweight fight, theoretically, and then he doesn't necessarily have the big money fight. This is a guaranteed big money fight for him, that if he fucking wins, the upside, if he wins, is huge. The downside, if he wins, he's going to go down and defend his featherweight belt. He's going to lose a bit of steam, but the upside to winning this fight is fucking huge. Kozikan says, Fab, hope all is well, mate. Got a question for you. Does a home crowd give some kind of advantage to fighters? Do they even notice a crowd? I don't know. To some, yes. To some, no. But I think being at home helps in a lot. The familiarity of the place itself helps you. The rules are a little bit different from state to state, commission to commission, and country to country. So that helps as well. Just the time frames and the lack of jet lag, and just being able to go to the grocery store and you know what food you're getting, being able to drink the water. Some countries you can't drink the water. All these things fucking make a massive difference. But then there's a pressure of family, friends, everyone wanting to come watch a fight, asking you for tickets. That's a bitch. Kozikan says, I'm nervous for Volk if he gets in a hole and there is no crowd. I was at the Perth fight, man. The crowd was so loud. I just wonder if that gets you up during the round when you were down. Yeah, it does. But it also works against you if you start to lose. You know what I mean? If you're starting to lose. Also, fights look very different, man. Like if you are in someone's home crowd and they kick you in the leg, the whole crowd cheers. That affects the judges, you know. So yeah, it does. It affects the fight. I don't know how much it helps or hinders the fighter itself. SG says, however, if he does lose, could this be his last chance to fight for the lightweight belt? You can't look at it like that, because I think you got to understand. You got to understand that you can't think like that, because it's your chance to fight for the belt. That's it. Like, anyone gets a chance to fight for the belt. That's what you're looking for. John Wayne says the Middle Eastern fans will give Makhachev extra power. I was there last year against Charles. I felt like he could never be beaten. There you go. Sammy, let's do it.
Yeah, so first up, just looking at the offensive components of Volkanovski. On the left-hand side, we've got the accuracy. On the right-hand side, you've got the average attempted per round and the average landed per round. So on average per round, he lands, in the first round, he's landing 24 strikes per significant strikes per round, 31 round 2, 35 in round 3, or 36 in round 3. So he's actually increasing as the fight progresses. Obviously, a testament also to his work rate and his fitness as well. And then on the accuracy perspective of those significant strikes, he's also slightly increasing round on round. So he's leaning more and with increased efficiency as well. Also, with kind of moving on from that too, for those strikes and the where he actually lands his strikes. So his head strikes, 14 in the first round on average, 19 in the second round, 23 in the third round. So he's increasing as well for head strikes, and really head strikes and head, body, and legs. So it's really all aspects of his striking that actually increases as the fight progresses. And even in his accuracy as well, like in his head strikes, he's landing at 45% on average in the first round, second round 50, third round 52. So he's increasing on that aspect as well. And then also with strikes to the body and strikes to the leg, he's landing at first leg strikes 73%, 82%, and then another 82% in those third rounds as well. And because we have a lot of his fights on, like in the UFC as well, it's a pretty comprehensive coverage of his fighting stats too.
And what do you think with his leg strikes? How many leg strikes is he landing in general in a round?
On average, he's landing in round 1, he's landing 7, round 2, 8, round 3, 9. So he is increasing as the fight progresses as well.
Okay. Who do you have winning this, Sam? The odds are Volkanovski plus 200 and Makhachev minus 265.
Yeah, probably before I go down that road too, if you look at the actual side-by-side comparisons, on the left-hand side, we've got Volkanovski. On the right-hand side, we've got Islam. For their accuracy, Islam actually has a slightly higher accuracy in terms of total strikes, significant strikes, head strikes, body strikes even, is
this overall or is this head-to-head? Like when they fought each other, or is this overall?
Overall for every single UFC fight they've had.
Right.
So just in terms of overall performance in the UFC, Islam has a slightly better in terms of accuracy, even ground strikes and things like that. He's got 86% compared to Volkanovski's 73% in ground strikes. But in actual strikes landed, so obviously that's the accuracy is their landed over their attempted, whereas the actual average landed per round, Volkanovski's landing at a rate of 30 strikes per round, which is 3 times higher than Islam's 10 for significant strikes. For this overall, maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's just because I want him to win more, but I'm going to go with Volkanovski on this matchup.
Why is that?
More just the overall striking average per round and things like that. I think in that actual in the fight that they had together, I feel that Volkanovski did more damage overall. Obviously, it's a 10-point must system, and it's a round by round that Makhachev won. But in terms of total damage and things like that, and I think in that 5th round as well, he also, I feel he kind of figured him out a little bit more and kind of compensated and offset that grappling as well. So there was a few reversals in that Volkanovski had on Makhachev, and then was able to get on top and actually land those shots.
And do you have any of the stuff up here that's them head-to-head, like them when they fought each other?
The actual fight? Yes.
Yeah. And we can go through that now.
Yep.
And what you think.
So overall, Volkanovski landed 70 significant strikes in the whole fight compared to Makhachev's 57. Volkanovski.
Sorry, say again, please, Sammy. Can you say that again?
Volkanovski landed 70 significant strikes to Makhachev's 57. That's for the whole fight in total. Makhachev was accredited with 4 takedowns, and he was given in total for the whole fight 457 seconds of control time. Volkanovski was given 175. A lot of those, and this is for the whole fight as well, so we're not yet breaking it down round by round, but we've got 37 head strikes for Volkanovski, with 36 head strikes for Islam. And then, body strikes, 21 to Islam's 18. So fairly close in terms of head and body strikes. And it's really the leg strikes. Overall, Volkanovski landed 12 to Islam's 3.
I think that is a big key in this fight, is the leg kicks that I think is Volkanovski will employ and should employ. And he did well in the first fight, but I think he can do more. It is a riddle to me as to how Islam's going to look, because I do think he's going to be a better version of Islam than he fought in Perth. I do think that. I don't know that it's going to be enough to get past Volk. I think Volkanovski is a hard riddle himself to figure out for people. Just his physicality alone, just the way that he's built. Now, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, Sammy, because I do want Volkanovski to win. If Islam was fighting anyone else, I'm pretty much going for Islam. But I do think we're going to see a better version of Islam. I think Islam is a better version of what we saw in that fight. I do think that. Credit to Islam, and I do think those things that I said earlier are going to come into play. So I can see Islam getting this win. I can. I think, though, Volkanovski is going to be able to throw. This is how I think the fight's going to go, right? I think Volkanovski is going to throw more caution to the wind, and he's going to impose his will on Islam in the first few rounds. And if that's enough to get Islam out of there, it's going to be enough to get Islam out of there. If Islam is able to weather that storm and figure things out, which he does have the ability to, then I see Islam winning, either by stoppage or by decision. That's how I truly believe the fight will play out. I do think that Volkanovski is going to bring something to Islam that Islam hasn't seen, to be honest with you. I don't think that Volkanovski has the same worries that he would have in the first fight. I don't think he's going to respect Islam. I don't think he's going to fight with enough caution to be able to give Islam windows. Is this going to be enough to get Islam out of there? I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard for me to pick this one. I can see Volkanovski winning the fight that way, though. I can see him. If he wins, it's going to be he's brought it to Islam and put it on him from the start, pushed him up against the cage, landed big shots, and got Islam out of there. That's how I see Alex winning this fight. Or it's going to be Islam weathers a storm, figures it out, starts to take Alex down, starts to land big shots, starts to land body shots down the middle, straight left hands, and either gets Alex out of there or wins the decision. SG says the inside leg kicks from Orthodox versus Southpaw are mega. We saw Jonathan Martinez completely destroy Adrian Yannis's knee with them this past weekend. Yes, sir. SG says Moicano said that Volk has to be more aggressive this fight as well. Would that not be extremely risky against a higher level wrestler? I think I think Volkanovski can wrestle, though. You know what I mean? He can wrestle, and he has a physicality to be able to wrestle too, to be able to wrestle back. So, and being aggressive doesn't mean you go like a fucking lunatic. I think he has to come forward, throw bombs the way that he does, in the way that he does, not like just like a lunatic. And then he can push Islam up against the cage, and start to take that forward pressure away from Islam. That's what I think they mean by that. Rust the Beast says, why was Volk able to neutralize Islam's grappling when Charles Oliveira wasn't able to? I think that's a really, really false narrative, to be honest with you. They're very, very completely different grapplers. I don't think that Islam still took Volkanovski down and took his back and put a body triangle on him and rode the round out on a body triangle. He didn't do that to Charles. He didn't. When they got to the ground, he took Charles down, but Charles is kind of that's how he fights. People take Charles down and Charles ends up on his back. This happens a lot. This wasn't just Islam. And then off his back, Charles still wrestled up in an amazing fashion. He still had a lot of good moments in his grappling. Then he got clipped and dropped on his back. And then this is the big difference. Islam didn't give a shit. Islam went there past the guard and submitted him. Not many people can do that to Charles. But if Islam tagged anybody else and they landed like that on their back, he's doing whatever he wants to them, So it's not that's like a kind of false narrative. They're very different kind of fighters, Volkanovski and Charles Oliveira. John Wayne says, will Khabib being in Islam's corner help Islam mentally? I don't know, man. I have no idea. I cannot speculate to that. I do imagine that someone like Khabib's insight into fighting would be absolutely amazing, especially the bond that they have. They basically grew up together, wrestling, grappling, fighting. So the knowledge that you have of each other, and then the confidence that you have in that person can be like the eyes in the back of your head is huge. That is huge. Sammy?
I think it was an interesting point you just raised earlier as well, that Oliveira and Volkanovski are two different fighters and two different styles as well. So obviously, Makhachev has been training for an Oliveira fight. So on the right-hand side, you've got Oliveira. On the left-hand side here, you've got Volkanovski. In terms of accuracy, they're relatively similar profiles. Volkanovski is slightly better in accuracy. He's landing at 57% significant strike accuracy, 50% to the head, whereas Oliveira is landing at 54% significant strikes and 45% of those to the head. In terms of where they're striking, in terms of body and leg, they're overall relatively similar. But the big difference is Volkanovski's landing a lot more and where he's landing them as well. So he's landing, again, we just mentioned this before, but he's landing 30 to Oliveira's 13 per round. And he's landing 19 of those to the head compared to Oliveira's 8. So Makhachev is obviously prepared for a much different fighter than Volkanovski as well.
Sorry, Sammy, I just missed the last bit. My headphones messed up. What was the last thing you said?
I was just looking at the average per round significant strikes or strikes overall from Volkanovski compared to Oliveira. Volkanovski is landing at 30 to Oliveira's 13. So he's landing at a lot higher rate, significant strikes. And also on average, he's landing 19 of those to the head, whereas Oliveira is only landing about 8 to the head on average per round. So, and I'm just saying that Makhachev's obviously prepared for a much different fighter in Oliveira than Volkanovski.
No, absolutely. There's a couple of things as well. Like Oliveira, not that Volkanovski lacks fucking power in his punches, not at all. But Oliveira's got a lot of wins where he hits you and knocks you the fuck out. Like he hits people once and really hurts them, or once or twice and really hurts them. So he has those fights. He's got those fights. Also, off his back, Oliveira is super dangerous. If I don't know that necessarily Volkanovski has that off his back, but he definitely has his own physicality that makes it very difficult to get him down. I think the other thing, again, the narratives in the fight, I was going for Volkanovski. I make no fucking secret about that. I was going for Volkanovski then. I'm going for him now. But when I'm watching the fight as a fan of Volkanovski, right, I'm watching it like, like this, because I thought on the feet Volkanovski was going to be levels above Makhachev. And somebody wrote here, Makhachev held his own. Nathan Gorman wrote, Makhachev held his own in the strike. He did more than hold his own. Like at the start of the fight, Makhachev hit Volkanovski, and Volkanovski took a knee, man. Like he dropped. And so people forget this, like, because the narrative's been so strong from people that Makhachev lost the fight. And whilst I personally know Alex and I was going for Alex, I feel Islam won the fight, you know. I don't see... You could give it a draw, maybe a draw. But you'd have to be really trying to give Alex the draw, I think, because very clearly Makhachev won 3 rounds. My opinion, he won 2. First and 4, he won real clear. Second and third, pick one. Give one to Alex, give one to him. And the 5th round was won clearly by Alex, but I don't think it was necessarily a 10-8 round. So Makhachev did fantastic job on his feet against Alex, and I think that's what threw Alex off as well. Hyena says, if he didn't finish him with a full camp, how will he finish him on less than 2 weeks' notice? I mean, anything can happen, and Volk is a definition of greatness, but I don't see it happening. Russ the Beast says, in your opinion, what changed in round 5 of fight 1 that allowed Volk to dominate in the way that he did at the end? He fucking caught him with that right hand. I do think that Islam slowed down a lot in that fight. I don't know how much the hydration would have affected Islam necessarily in that fight. I can tell you this, man, the rehydration windows, if you cut a lot of weight, it's getting down to the weight is not hard. It's rehydrating back and fighting that's hard. I don't know if that's what happened in that 5th round, or if just the sheer physicality of trying to control Volkanovski gassed Islam out, and Islam was able to catch him with that right hand. This can happen. These fights, these things can happen. I think it's going to be interesting to see this. I don't know the odds here. We have Makhachev minus 265 and Volkanovski is plus 200. Again, my opinion on that, Sammy, what do you think of those odds?
Well, I'm actually favoring Volk in this one as well. So obviously, it's totally different to what I'd expect to. And I was also just going to add to, if you share that screen there as well, that we've got up. For the whole fight in total, as we just mentioned before, Volkanovski lands 70 significant strikes to Makhachev's 57. So he did land 13 more significant strikes overall. But he also landed 164 total strikes to Islam's 95. And a lot of those were from the ground strikes and stuff like that in the 5th round, where they're not credited as significant strikes by the UFC, but they're still strikes if they don't land cleanly, if they're kind of half landing on the arms or anything like that and half blocked in any way, then they're not considered significant strikes. But I do think they are obviously an important factor into winning a fight as well.
So he outlanded. So from your point of view as well, he outlanded Islam a lot as well, and that's one of the things why you're basing your pick as well. Would that be fair? Yep. Not to put words in your mouth, just to be clear for myself. Yeah, I don't know that he's going to be able to do that, though. There is a factor there where he is taking this fight on 10 days' notice. He hasn't prepared at that weight, so I don't know that. That's why there's an enigma to me in this. You know what I mean? In that he hasn't got the full camp behind him. He hasn't been preparing at lightweight, so I don't know if the outputs are going to look the same. I don't know that that's why I think that Volkanovski can beat him. I think Volkanovski is just going to be able to beat him because he's going to be able to come at Islam, and he will come at Islam with a different energy, I do believe. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. But I do think that if he comes out and doesn't have any respect for Islam and he knows that he can mitigate the takedowns, or stop them completely, then it could be interesting. Or if you can push Islam to the back on the back foot and start to land shots, it's going to be interesting. SG says, I've heard several people who analyze the first fight say the Volk striking was not as crisp as usual, potentially alluding that Volk focused too much on grappling. Yeah, or maybe you have to focus on the fact that if you just come out and strike, Islam's going to fucking try and take you down, and this is going to be a problem. John Wayne said, how many of those strikes were in the fourth round where Volk hit Islam a lot in the body triangle? I don't know. Sammy?
There was a lot. So you can see as well in that fourth round, there's 205 seconds of control time attributed to Islam. So obviously, that's nearly 3.5 minutes there. He's got 49 of those total strikes landed, and only 6 of those were considered significant. But probably the main point was that fifth round where he's even let him.
No, sorry, Sammy. If you go back to the fourth round, I think the question that's being asked is, how Volkanovski had the most significant strikes. How many of those strikes were counted by Volkanovski hitting Islam when Islam was on Volkanovski's back? If that makes sense.
There's about 49 total strikes landed in that round, and only 6 of those were considered significant. So a lot of those ones overall were those kind of when he had that body triangle and he was just kind of like, throwing the glove over his head behind him. A lot of those were counted just as total strikes, and obviously they're not considered significant. But just in that fifth round as well, he had 52. So that was obviously his best round in terms of total strikes, and only 20 of those were considered significant in that fifth round.
Okay, so I think that's really interesting, because are you saying Volkanovski, so what would it be, something like 30 strikes or 25 strikes or something, that when you look at the total strikes, a lot of them were done when he was actually had his back taken. So it'd be hard to be able. That brings the numbers of strikes though down significantly. Hence why this is called Lies, Dirty Lies, and Statistics. It's a very, very interesting thing when you break down the strikes and you break down how how it looks. Because at first, when you were saying how much more strikes Volkanovski landed than Islam, I was like, holy fuck, that's huge, you know what I mean, in the fight. But then a lot of them were done when he had his actual back taken, like a significant, like even say 30 strikes is a lot, to count when you have your own back taken, which is you're not really going to knock anyone out from there. I don't know. I think it's hard for me to make a proper call on this, because I am very biased towards Volkanovski. I am very biased. So SG says, are the ground strikes significant? Do you want to explain that, Sammy?
Not really. So the way that the UFC records the ground strikes, so even if we look at that fifth round, they said that Volkanovski threw 7, only landed 5. And so they're really not considered significant. Even so, if they have to be kind of clean, they
flush.
Same with the clinch as well. So strikes from the clinch and from the ground, whereas strikes standing up and from distance, if they land at all, they're all considered significant, basically. So, yeah.
So that's how it's seen and kind of scored as well. Would that be fair, Sammy?
Yes. I'm assuming so, unless the judges.
Yeah. The scoring's different though, because the scoring's done on a 10-point must system. So it's who you think won that round, So it's this is not necessarily. This is how it's collected by the UFC stats, not how the judges score the fight necessarily. So there's that discrepancy when people look back and they go, oh, the significant strikes, but the significant strikes, even then, the way that they're collated is different as well. I find it hard to think that this is my honest call. I think that the odds are, again, they're a little bit skewed. I don't think that there should be such a big spread, but I would favor Islam in this fight just because he won the last one and he's had the full camp, etc. But having said that, I do think that Volkanovski, without the pressure and with in his mind what he would see as the path to victory, and he has very clear-cut paths to victory. With those couple of things in mind, I do think he's not going to respect Islam. He's going to bully Islam in there, and he's going to try and push Islam against the cage and have Islam moving backwards. If he can do that and do that over a prolonged, enough time, I think he could knock Islam out. He could finish Islam. I do believe that. I do think he's going to throw some wrinkles in there as well with trying to take Islam down and whatnot. Again, I say all of that to say this. I don't know how all the other factors in the first fight affected Islam. And if they did affect him, you're going to see the opposite sort of thing. You're going to see a bigger, stronger Islam. And quite possibly, Volkanovski is not going to be in prime shape, quite possibly. And this would be an advantage now to Islam. Islam, I do believe, suffered from the not hydrating in the same window, because it's a fact. You don't have the same hydration windows in Australia as you do in Abu Dhabi, and especially in Perth. It's just a fucking fact. This isn't Islam bullshitting. This is real. And that does fucking affect you, massively. So if this is the case, and Volkanovski wasn't preparing, which he wasn't, for a lightweight fight. He was preparing for a featherweight fight. He just had surgery. If he's not able to impose the physicality early on and get Islam out of there, then that's Islam's path to victory, I believe. I think that if you engage Islam in wrestling too much, then that's a debate you're having about a topic that he knows more than you about, and eventually he's going to end up figuring you out, and he's going to get you down, and that's going to. Volkanovski's too smart. He might shoot a double here and there, but he's not going to engage in prolonged chain wrestling with Islam Makhachev, where Islam is going to get the better of it. I don't. On a long enough time frame, he's going to get the better of it. Yeah, Alex is going to go in there and try and win a scramble or two. He's going to take risks. He's going to be super dangerous. And I do think that that's an X factor that could get him the win. Hopefully gets him the win, in my opinion. Sammy? Anything else before we leave these learned gentlemen?
No, not particularly. I think we've covered it all off. And we've also looked at this in the past as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Like the channel. And I would like for all of you guys to join us. We do the Saturday, the Week in MMA, and we also do the Sunday, the Fight Companion, of course. So please, guys, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Really love having you guys on here. Thank you so much for your support. Guys, big hugs to you, and I will see you on Saturday. Thank you very much, Sammy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.